everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and you know what time of the week it is. It's Friday. Gotta get down on Friday because it's time to talk about my wrestlers of the week. Big week this week, of course. The G1 Climax has started. That's probably the biggest news in terms of wrestlers of the week points, but also we've got 2 episodes of Dynamite to take into consideration, a decent night of action on NXT as well. SmackDown's looking alright at the minute too. Raw also aired this week. But on the whole, it has been a very good week of wrestling action. So, without any further ado, let's take a look at those honourable mentions. First of all, I feel like we should shout out Kaylee Ray, who successfully defended her NXT UK Women's Championship against Piper Niven this week. One of the first shows back for the NXT UK brand, and Kaylee Ray put in a good performance. Piper Niven looked a little bit weak in defeat. She was showing a bit of compassion towards Kaylee Ray. You should be going for that belt, Piper Niven, come on! If it was an ICW, they'd have already put each other through thumbtacks by now, so it just doesn't make sense for me in terms of a character development. However, honourable mentions there, of course. Roman Reigns gets an honourable mention because his character work continues to be excellent on SmackDown. Even if it hasn't resulted in excellent matches, it's been very, very compelling nonetheless. And Candice LeRae on NXT as well won that Battle Royal to become #1 contender to Io Shirai's NXT Women's Championship. And also a shout out to Ben Carter, who made his Dynamite debut on Late Night Dynamite and really impressed in that match against Scorpio Sky, but then unfortunately revealed that he has tested positive for COVID-19. So our well wishes to him, definitely. Looks very promising as well, so I can't wait to see him back in action. But now on to number 10 this week, and it's the leader of the league table, extending his lead by just 1 point, but it's the AEW World Champion, Jon Moxley. It was a hectic week for both Jon Moxley and AEW with, you know, COVID forcing changes all over the place. The most notable one being that Lance Archer couldn't turn up, which meant that that big 6-man between Team Moxley and Team Archer couldn't take place. So instead, AEW went, right, fine, let's throw Eddie Kingston in a title match. And that really worked out well, because I think that Kingston and Moxley matched up very well, and I think that they've really brought the intensity, as we probably guessed they would. It was a very enjoyable main event to the show. Went a little bit short for my liking, but Moxley again looks like a strong and fighting babyface champion. Moxley's babyface run with this belt has been maybe the best face run with a title I can remember in Western wrestling for a long time, really, a long time. He's not been getting bogged down in strange feuds or hot potatoing the title back and forth or being made to look like a fool or, you know, squashing his opponents with too much ease. He's really been developing in kayfabe as a wrestler in the ring, learning new submissions, learning new techniques, and really becoming a very well-rounded champion, while of course always bringing the fire and intensity on the mic. So yeah, despite a bit of an off-kilter week for AEW, I feel like their champion still brought the goods. So he gets 1 point and continues to be great. Next up, we have to talk about his challenger getting 2 points this week, Eddie Kingston. Despite losing the match, I have to give Eddie Kingston the extra point for stepping up to the plate, going straight in there with little preparation into this big match, maybe the biggest match of his entire career, to be honest, given the stakes, and, you know, just delivering as he always does. The strikes were something to behold in this match from Kingston, absolutely lighting Moxley up with chops and slaps to the face and kicks, and everything that you like to see from an Eddie Kingston match. Yes, he lost pretty convincingly, but I think that his night was kind of saved by how well he carried himself on the mic, and also just in terms of general physical charisma. At the end, when the heels were beating down all the faces to send the show off the air, he's just sat cradling Moxley and just screaming as if to be like, oh, I couldn't beat him, I came this close. And also he had that promo earlier on in the night where he just called Moxley out and said, look, you're a sellout, I'd never sold out. And it was such an Eddie Kingston promo, just classic Eddie Kingston, so real, so raw, and delivered absolutely perfectly. And at times in the match as well, his facial expressions just continue to amaze me. Like at certain points when the match was getting really intense and he was coming closer and closer to winning, he looked on the verge of tears at times, and I just think it was so well done. So 2 points for Eddie Kingston. I'd love to see him in a longer, maybe more feature-length match. I think that would be fantastic. Number 8, it's Mayu Iwatani, who I believe pips Io Shirai to become the highest-ranking woman on Wrestlers of the Week this year once again. She's always been there or thereabouts since pretty much the start of the year. Despite a long layoff for, well, not just Japanese wrestling, but most of wrestling around the world. But the WWE and AEW wrestlers had a chance to catch her, and only Io Shirai really did. and then Mayu Iwatani has since the 5-star Grand Prix in Stardom has kicked off again. She's just leapfrogged Io once again and is now the highest ranked women's wrestler once again. Once again as well, it feels like every week of the 5-star Grand Prix I'm saying Mayu Iwatani had a really good match, and once again she put on the best match of the week in the tournament in my opinion, taking on and defeating Tam Nakano. Now when I compare Stardom's 5-star GP to the G1 Climax in New Japan, I mean that only in terms of format. It's got a similar round robin style format. The thing that I would say isn't similar is the style of matches. Stardom's matches are usually quite a bit shorter and wrestled at a faster pace, whereas the G1 Climax matches, generally speaking, are longer and more drawn out to give it that more kind of epic feel. But in Stardom, often that can work to the promotion's advantage because you get action, 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 action with little gaps, little lulls in terms of intensity. And that really benefited Mayu Iwatani in this match, who just tore into Tam Nakano, and Tam Nakano, in fairness, tore into Mayu Iwatani. They were going back and forth. It was a very fast-paced affair. I think it only went about 10 minutes or so, but the pace really didn't drop. It was like a 10-minute sprint, essentially. I don't know what else there is to say, really, apart from the fact that Stardom kind of do a good job, a decent job of building other people up to the level of their ace, whoever that may be, whether in the past it was Io Shirai or whoever. But in this case, Mayu Iwatani still seems to be like an extra step above the rest of the roster, and I would like to see Stardom's booking maybe try and bring some more people up to her level. They were in a stronger position a year or two ago, in my opinion. Obviously, the pandemic hasn't helped things at all, and now they're trying to build up this whole new host of stars like Julia, for example, and I just feel like it's a work in progress and they're getting there, but at the moment, Mayu is just far and away untouchable. Number 7, it's time to go into the G1 Climax and talk about that a little bit. And number 7 this week is maybe the winner of the G1 Climax, although we'd have to win 2 years in a row for that to be the case. It's Kota Ibushi. Now, when I looked at Ibushi's opponents for the first week of the G1, I thought, well, he's going to be Wrestler of the Week. And he didn't. And it was a strange case of some of the big banner matches in the first week of the G1 still impressing as, athletic contests, but not impressing maybe as much as we'd expect them to. Could that be a case of maybe slight ring rust from the New Japan wrestlers? Or could it just be a case of the crowd having to be a bit more quiet? I don't know. But Ibushi's opponents this week were Okada, who he beat, which sounds like a 5-star, match of the year contender, and it wasn't. It was a very good match, but it wasn't that elite level that we'd expect from those two. And as we saw at Wrestle Kingdom in January, but it was still a very good match. Ibushi pulled out the win. Okada is struggling, and also he then went on to face Jay White, who he beat in last year's G1 Climax final, but this time it was Jay who got the victory. Again, in fact, I probably preferred that match a little bit more to the Okada-Ibushi one, which sounds nuts because Okada's one of the best in the world, but I think I preferred Ibushi-Jay White this week because it was more of your classic heel babyface dynamic, and they played it off pretty well. And I have to add those two performances together and say that Ibushi definitely does deserve a place on the Wrestlers of the Week league table, but he is one of many this week who I feel I was expecting just bigger performances out of, and I don't know if that's his fault specifically. I don't think I'm saying that. I just feel like the G1 has got off to a bit of a less amazing start than we were all perhaps expecting. Number 6, Kota Ibushi's second opponent this week, Jay White. Now, we've already talked about his second match, the one against Ibushi, which he managed to win, but Jay White also won his first match and has a spotless 2-0 record going into week 2. White's first match came against Shingo Takagi, a man who could potentially have beaten him to get the G1 off to a really rambunctious start with the Dragon just bossing the heel of the company around and destroying him. That's not quite what happened. Jay White picked up the victory instead, and I think this bodes incredibly well for the New Zealander. And I'll explain why. I feel like this victory and the one over Ibushi, getting that monkey off his back because he beat him last year in the final, I feel like these two wins have set up Jay White to be the big bad guy, the big heel of the G1 Climax this year. Exactly the same position he was in last year, and one which puts him in a position to have very impressive matches and raise his stock. And yes, people get involved, Gator will try and help Jay White out and that sort of thing, maybe another member of Bullet Club will run down or whatever, but at the same time, I think that Jay carries that really well. He is one of the purest heels in wrestling today. He puts on incredible matches with a very simple formula, but one tailored to absolute perfection, and I can really see him going far. Could he win the tournament? Maybe, but I think we could be seeing him set up to be the big fall guy at the end once again. Number 5, a man that I really wanted to put higher on this week's Wrestlers of the Week top 10, it's Tomohiro Ishii, right? Still a very good, impressive pair of performances this week against two very good opponents, but at the same time, not quite the level that I thought. Again, like Ibushi, when I saw Ishii's matchups, I was like, he's going to be in contention for Wrestler of the Week. Instead, you know, 5th isn't bad, especially in a very competitive G1 week. The match against Suzuki, his first match, was brilliant, as you'd expect between those two. His second match against Ospreay was good, but like that Ibushi and Okada match, wasn't quite on the grand level that you'd maybe expect. But I don't want to knock Ishii's performances too much because it's Tomohiro Ishii. He always brings it in the G1 Climax, and even though he hasn't brought it quite to the level that we expect of him usually, he's still been one of the most consistent performers in the tournament so far. And don't forget, of course, that the G1 can just turn everything on its head in the space of a few weeks. I remember Ishii, I think it was last year in fact, being quite low down on the general league table and then winning 3, I think, consecutive Wrestler of the Week performances in a row, picking up 30 points and just rocketing him to near the top of the table. So you never know what's going to happen, and I think the Stone Pitbull could maybe shock a lot of us in the weeks ahead. Is it a shock if he's really good? I don't know. Number 4 is a man that I've wanted to give far less points to, but unfortunately he had one of the best matches, maybe the best match of this week, so I had to give him some. He lost that match, and I'll talk about that match later on. But number 4 for now is the ace. Go ace, Hiroshi Tanahashi. Bit of air guitar for the lads. I hate him so much. But apart from my own personal bias against Hiroshi Tanahashi, he is an incredible wrestler still. Even as he's getting on a bit in age, he's still an elite level performer in the ring. He reminded us of that this week. He often brings it for the G1. He kind of saves his energy these days all year until the G1 comes around and then wows us with some amazing performances. And he did so again this week in one of his 2 matches. And again, I will come back to that match in a bit. But now I want to talk about why Tanahashi didn't get like 9 points this week, or even 10. The reason for that is because Tanahashi's second match of this week was against Toru Yano. And as anyone who follows the G1 Climax regularly knows, Toru Yano is an absolute pain in the arse when it comes to trying to predict what's going to happen. That is because Yano can realistically, even though he's never going to hold the title or anything, he can beat anyone and nobody bats an eyelid because he always has comedy matches in the G1. So he'll tape someone's legs together and roll them up, or he'll, you know, tie them to the guardrail and they'll get counted out. And everyone just accepts it because it's Yano and he can beat main eventers if he wants to. It's like if Santino Marella started just picking up wins over like Randy Orton, but it didn't count because it was in a tournament and he beats everyone in the tournament. It was very much like that. Toru Yano beat Hiroshi Tanahashi this week, despite being blindfolded himself, low-blowing Tanahashi and rolling him up, and then not even knowing that he'd won the match because he was blindfolded. That's why Tanahashi doesn't get more points on this week's Wrestlers of the Week, because of that devastating loss to Toru Yano. And I had to laugh because I don't like Tanahashi, ha ha ha. But at the same time, what is that booking? Still though, Tanahashi's first performance of the week saved the day in terms of Wrestlers of the Week points, and I do understand Yano's function in the G1 Climax because he's an absolute wild card, he's a maverick, and you can't tell who's going to win oftentimes because they've still got a match with Yano coming up and it's literally just a coin flip. Moving swiftly on before I get too annoyed to number 3 this week, Minoru Suzuki picking up 8 points for, I think, my second favourite G1 Climax match of the week against Tomohiro Ishii. And I don't know how else to describe it because whenever I talk about Suzuki and Ishii, I just go, and it describes it quite well. Yeah, this match was awesome. I was surprised to see Suzuki pick up the victory, actually. I thought maybe, in my heart of hearts, I really wanted this to be Ishii's year in the G1. Unfortunately, it seems like that might not be the case, and it seems like Ishii might be the one who is going to maybe come close towards the end and not quite get it. But Suzuki picks up a massive win at the start, and then the booking did something really clever. So Suzuki won this big war of just dads against Ishii, big hard dads, and then went into a match against his own stablemate Taichi and lost to Taichi. Now what that's done is, that has taken the win, you know, the prestige that Suzuki got from beating Ishii. You always look good if you beat Ishii, he's the Stone Pitbull. Suzuki's riding on a high, loses to his stablemate, and now everyone's thinking, well, Taichi's really good because he beat Suzuki, who'd just beaten Ishii. Do you see what I mean? So that's really good. That's encouraging signs for not only Taichi, but also Suzuki as well, I think. The fact that he is still trusted to be in this sort of position, despite being older than much of the field, I think is a really good thing. Very impressive week for Minoru Suzuki. He has been doing well in Wrestlers of the Week, considering I thought there was going to be a big drop-off for Suzuki. I thought he was just going to be in tag matches, 6-mans, those weird 8-mans that they often run at shows that on pay-per-views. No, he's been tearing it up in New Japan despite the pandemic, and I have to commend him for that. Number 2, enough G1 Climax for just a second, because it's time to go to NXT to talk about a result that I was absolutely delighted with, picking up 9 points this week. It's Kyle O'Reilly. Kyle O'Reilly is the boy, and I love him, and it looks like we're about to get babyface O'Reilly, and I can't wait. He won the NXT Gauntlet Eliminator this week, a match that I desperately wanted him to win, but wasn't sure if he was going to or not. It was a bit of a strange field, and for that I thought maybe someone completely random, maybe Cameron Grimes will get himself an NXT title shot, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad match, but obviously Grimes is further down the pecking order in the roster, Jack. It's Friday, I'm tired. But because it was such an even field, I suppose, they kept it unpredictable, and I was delighted to see Kyle O'Reilly pick up the win, and pretty much, I think he went the distance in the gauntlet as well. He was in from the start, wasn't involved in all of the eliminations, but certainly some of them, and did it, and got himself a match with Finn Balor, which I absolutely cannot wait for. The problem is that I think Balor will win, and I'm desperately behind Kyle O'Reilly, and I really want him to win at that takeover in early October, the 4th of October maybe, around then. I really want Kyle O'Reilly to win, and I don't think he's going to. That's a problem, isn't it? That's a problem. But we love a big feat of endurance on Wrestlers of the Week. We loved it, that time when Seth Rollins lasted the whole hour or whatever in the gauntlet. O'Reilly's performance here wasn't quite that long, but it was impressive all the way through, keeping his signature style, showing off all of his striking and technical abilities, but also packing the performance with that classic Kyle O'Reilly in-ring charisma that only a small percentage of wrestlers really have. So yes, O'Reilly is brilliant. Can't wait to see that match against Balor as well. I think that Balor will win. I'm pretty sure he will, but I'm going to be fully Team Kyle O'Reilly heading into that, and I'm going to be very sad when he loses, but it's a big chance for some points on Wrestlers of the Week. And also, Kyle O'Reilly could potentially be breaking away from the Undisputed Era with Adam Cole if he turns face, and I'm in favour of that totally, because Kyle O'Reilly needs to get away from the heel of this entire series, remember, Roderick Strong, who's been very quiet this year, admittedly, and I feel a bit sorry for him. But number one, and my wrestler of the week, and you know what? Since I started watching New Japan, this guy was pretty much my boy. I always enjoy watching him win big, as he did at the start of this year in Wrestle Kingdom, and I'm glad to see him back on top of Wrestlers of the Week. It's the leader of LIJ, the man himself, Tetsuya Naito. Naito, right, so I was talking about Ishii and Ibushi and people in the G1 who had really good looking matches, a really good lineup, but didn't quite deliver as I expected them to. Naito has done, 100%. First of all, Naito took part in the best match of the G1 Climax so far, in my mind, the one against Hiroshi Tanahashi, and he managed to pull out the victory, and then followed it up with a very strong match as well. Not the best match or anything, but a very strong match against Zack Sabre Jr., another man with whom he shares a very good chemistry. Naito beating Tanahashi, and I think it may have been in Osaka as well. I love it whenever Naito beats Tanahashi, because Tanahashi was the man who basically stopped Naito from main eventing Wrestle Kingdom when he won the G1 years ago, before he was all LIJ. And now Naito's made him his little bit, my anti-Tanahashi bias is shining through. But it was a very good week for Naito, and a very good pair of performances. And could he do it? Could he win as champion? It would be an interesting kind of unique angle to take on the G1 Climax if the champion were to win and then choose who they want to face at Wrestle Kingdom. And I could potentially see it happening. And I don't think I'd be too against it if it did either. In fact, thinking about it now, would that be a very smart move for New Japan to have Naito win the G1 and hold back who he's going to choose until nearer to Wrestle Kingdom, just in case that person, you know, has to isolate for a week or two and can't make the show? The problem I've realised there is if Naito has to isolate and miss the show. And so with all said and done, check out that Naito-Tanahashi match, by the way, the best match of the tournament so far. But the way the G1's structured, there'll be more excellent matches cropping up in the next few weeks, I am certain. But yeah, now that's all said and done, congratulations Tetsuya Naito, you are my wrestler of the week. And now, without any further ado, let's take a look at what that does to the league table. So we can see that Jon Moxley has extended his lead by 1 point over Cody at the top of the table, but crucially, Cody did make his big return this week, so we'll see what happens there. Worth mentioning as well that some WWE guys could get the jump on some New Japan guys despite the G1 Climax going on, because we have a big pay-per-view this weekend, of course, Clash of Champions, with some unique looking matches. No absolute standout in my mind, but maybe we'll see something good happen, who knows. Big shout out of course to Mayu Iwatani, who is once again the top ranked woman, just 1 place ahead of Io Shirai just behind her. And as we get down the bottom, heartbreakingly, you can't see because he's not got enough points to be in the top 20, but Tetsuya Naito is just 1 point behind Seth Rollins. Unlucky mate, well done on the 10 points though. And so that is it for Wrestlers of the Week. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, and stay safe out there, stay positive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.